Bases dropped on a new edition of Soccer Down here, November 12th. It's a Tuesday. That means it is hashtag Tuesday Thoughts. So you want to join the conversation, you want to be part of the show this morning, listen in live, tweet at us at Soccer Down here. Use the hashtag Tuesday Thoughts and let us know what you're thinking on the midway point of the MLS trade window. There's only been one trade that's been announced so far, but lots of rumors, both with the trade window, with the upcoming transfer window, with players out of contract, with players' options being picked up or not being picked up. We'll get into all of that here to kick things off so we kind of know where everything stands early on. I'm Jason Longshore. John Nelson is over there computerless because his computer and all technology hates him on a regular basis.
Yes, agreed. And so we'll see. The computer is staring at me going, I didn't have my cup of coffee yet before you wanted me to start functioning. So, staring at a nice blue screen at the moment.
Yeah, that's not usually good. John and Nick held things down on Soccer Over There last night. I think the weekend of 3 games and 2 of them Friday night in pretty cold weather, especially by the end of the night, caught up to me a bit. My voice is okay. I hope it sounds okay. I think it will hold up. Feel a little blah because it's getting to be that time of the year, and I think my sinuses know that the cold is coming tonight, and they're already not happy about it. So I will do my best to croak out a show this morning, and we'll keep this thing going. But let's get into the rumors and news and updates and all the stuff from MLS silly season. First trade on the board was yesterday. Victor Ulloa from Cincinnati to Miami. $50,000 in GAM, a third-round pick in the 2020 Super Draft, which is mostly meaningless. The part of this that jumped out to me on the Inter Miami side is that they got the number 1 pick in the re-entry draft. They swapped picks, so Miami and Nashville pick at the end of that and waivers and those types of things. But now Miami will pick first. You look back at the re-entry draft, and that's the one, just so you know like what kind of pool of players we're going to be talking about here. That's the draft that is for players who essentially don't qualify for free agency, have been in the league for a little while, mid-20s, but are not free agents, or some older players who haven't been in the league that long. And it can be a useful tool. Not always, but it can be. You look at last year, first round, Colorado picked Andre Rawls, was the first pick in the reentry draft, and a lot of teams passed. Okay, that's fine. Toronto picked Nick DeLeon. You'll remember Nick DeLeon. He scored the goal that put Toronto in MLS Cup. I would say they are happy with that pick. Real Salt Lake picked up Donnie Toya in the first round. Those were your Stage 1 reentry draft picks. Stage 2, which is where you're basically picking up the rights and you can renegotiate a deal with the player. Tommy McNamara went to Houston. Matt Lampson went to the LA Galaxy. Okay. You look back in previous ones, because not every pool of players that's available is the same. So Mike Grella went to Colorado in 2017. Injuries made that just really not work out. Tyrone Mears went to Minnesota in 2017. They got some minutes out of him, didn't really work out. The LA Galaxy in Stage 2 picked up Servando Carrasco. He's still there, so they've gotten 2 good years out of him as a reserve central midfielder. But moving up means Miami will be able to pick whoever they want out of this, and they will also then get to pick whoever they want first out of the Stage 2 portion, where you can renegotiate the deal. It's potentially a valuable move, and as it kind of felt like in this trade a little bit of a throw-in, you take it. You absolutely take it. You look back, Maxi Urruti was a re-entry pick at one point. Dallas picked him up from Portland. He gave Dallas a good number of seasons. It can be a vital move. It really can. I think back to the 2013 re-entry draft. where DC United had the first pick. DC was coming off of one of the worst seasons in MLS history. They picked up Sean Franklin, who gave them a number of years. In round 2, because they picked up somebody in the first round, so it goes to a second round, DC picked up Bobby Boswell, gave them a number of years. Then you go into the stage 2 portion of it where you can renegotiate. They picked up Fabian Espendola, gave them years. Picked up Nana Adekora in round 2, gave them some more seasons. So they've remade their team in the re-entry draft in 2013, and in 2014, they were one of the top teams in the Eastern Conference. For a Miami side that has nothing right now, this is a good way to have your pick of who you want in a couple different ways to bolster your roster with MLS veterans. I think it's a really smart move from Paul McDonough and Inter Miami to swap these re-entry picks and give you priority on it. You get first shot at whoever you want that's available. I like it.
And as you were running through the history of it, how many guys do you think they already have in mind when it comes to those particular selections and rounds?
Well, you don't know.
Considering they need folks.
There's no way to know. Like, I mean, I could BS you and give you like, oh, well, they're looking at this, and no, nobody knows who's available yet. So right now, it's best on the board. They only have like 4 guys. So,
right, and that was my other point, is that considering that they only have a couple of guys right now in-house, you need personnel, and getting this opportunity gives you that extra push to bring in other guys.
No, because you had it. It gives you first choice of the pool, and that's the important part. Is if you're Inter Miami and you like this pool, now you're going to get the number 1 pick out of it. Not many teams are going to take advantage of this, especially in that first stage of the re-entry draft, because you've got to pick up the contract. You've got to pick up the option, or I think you have to sign them at a certain point if it's a free agent that opts into re-entry instead of free agency, which doesn't really happen. So basically think about it as you're picking up the option. All right, there's some options that maybe aren't the greatest contracts, but Inter Miami has a clean slate. So they're going to pick 1 guy here for sure. They're probably going to pick 2 guys. Then you're going to go into the stage 2 where you can renegotiate, and I would expect them to pick up 1, maybe 2 guys there. It's going to be 4 pieces to your roster of guys who you would expect can play and give you minutes in year 1 while you continue to build your team. So I think it's a smart move for Miami, considering that they just don't have anybody really yet. They're not coming in like Nashville with a group of players that they've either already acquired, already signed, have already played with them in Nashville. We'll see who they keep from the USL side. For Miami, it is a little bit of you need some guys who know the league, have been in the league, can give you that veteran core. The re-entry draft can give you that. So smart move for Miami to get that part thrown in. I think Ulloa is a great pickup for them as well. A guy who was always kind of next in line in Dallas, and he went to Cincinnati, and it just didn't work. So, this is good for him to go to a spot where he's going to be fresh. He's going to be a player who I think will be a starter day 1, or at least have that opportunity. So, good move for Inter Miami. Cincinnati gets a little something of GAM, I guess. They get to move on. Good for them.
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
Darwin Quintero. This thing gets complicated. So, on Twitter yesterday, Darwin Quintero tweeted out, I believe this was Instagram as well, that he is, I want to get the wording correct, he said, after 2 years of living great experiences in Minnesota United, I want to inform you that the technician, which would be the manager, Adrian Heath, and the club made the decision not to validate the renewal option. I want to thank you for all that was lived. Were 2 years of much learning. My best wishes and thanks for everything. Speaking to the fans of Minnesota. Not too long after that, then you get a report, and Kyle Eliasson, who is ProSoccerUSA.com's Minnesota United correspondent, he said, Minnesota United spokesperson has said Darwin Quintero's 2020 contract option has not been declined. Club declined to comment beyond that. Okay. I'm assuming that it has not been declined, which is the key terminology here, because he will be traded in MLS. I think the wording from Darwin's tweet is more along the lines of, you're not coming back here. He's not going to play in Minnesota. Could he play elsewhere in MLS? Yes. If he gets traded and if that club picks up the option and if Darwin doesn't fight it, and I don't think anybody's going to trade for him unless they know that he's going to play for them and want to play for them. Could this be a scenario where Darwin Quintero, if he isn't going to be in Minnesota, he wants to leave the league? Could be. Absolutely could be, and he could fight the contract option, as we've seen other players do, and force a move away from the league. It's where this gets complicated. That's why people are, I think, being very careful about terminology from the club side of it. There had been reports that Houston was interested in getting Quintero on a trade. We'll see if anybody else pops up into that. Orlando as well has been part of that mix. I have to keep an eye on this. This is an intriguing one, but I think it's very safe to say at this point, Darwin Quintero will not be wearing the jersey of the Loons in 2020.
And really, for me, I was, the Dom Dwyer element in all of this is the one that sticks out to me, although I would like to see him in a place like Houston to help grow that particular program. So those are the two that I have that I'm keeping my eyebrow raised when it comes to possible locations if it's going to be something in league. Yeah.
Okay, some reports out of South America. El Deportivo 12 radio program in Argentina, they are stating that the LA Galaxy will not be picking up the option on Fabio Alvarez's contract. He was on loan from Atletico Tucumán. He will go back to Tucumán and might spend 6 months there while his agent tries to shop him in the Mexican League. El Deportivo, different program, different outlet in Colombia, is reporting that Cristian Higuita of Orlando City, who's out of contract at the end of the calendar year, is close to joining América de Cali. He played for a different Cali club originally. He's been in Orlando from day one of the MLS side. I believe he played in USL for them as well for at least a year. He's the last original Orlando player with the club and looks like he will not be back in 2020. We've talked about it before on the show. Javier Mascherano, Inter Miami's been chasing him. He has been released from his contract in China, or it's run out. Well, now Federico Bueno of Fox Sports Argentina has said that Mascherano will not be going to Miami. He will join Estudiantes de La Plata instead. Veronica Brunati tweeted last night that the decision hasn't been final. He's still thinking about it over the next few days, but his family wants to remain in Argentina. Now, this is why you have to be careful in taking any words out of the South American press as gospel, because last time we checked in on the Javier Mascherano rumors, it was that his family wanted to go to Miami. It was very specific. The family wanted to go to Miami. That's why he was going to go to Miami. Now it's flipped the other way, so, throw your hands up, shake your head, and just keep an eye on it, because that's all you can do at this point. The other one that was very interesting was TN's Toda Pasión website in Argentina. Luciano Acosta, we know he's out of contract in D.C. He's not going to come back to D.C. United. There was some thought maybe he would sign elsewhere in MLS or however that could look. He has told Toda Pasión in an interview that he would love to return to Boca Juniors. That's where he started his career in Argentina. That's where he broke through initially. He went to D.C. on loan before they made the deal permanent. There's interest in England. There's interest in other parts of the world, but he said his door's always open for Boca, and he's waiting on the call. So is that a come and get me type of thing? Is that a just, I love my time at Boca, and I love the club, and if they want me back, I'd love to come? Don't know. But I think it's very clear that Luciano Acosta will not be in MLS in 2020 and beyond. That's your South American update, and that's only going to pick up as we go.
Could it be a little bit of both? Where Acosta's concerned, I love my time, but, if they called, I'd pick up the phone.
I mean, it could be. Just depends on what options are there. I don't know if he would walk into that team and play right now. So that's right. I mean, that's probably the bigger part for him at his age. Like, does he want to go somewhere like Boca and not play. I mean, I think at PSG you're talking about a different situation when he almost went there. If he didn't get to play, okay, you're looking at it differently because you're going to a mega club. Boca, I think he would expect to play, and I don't know if he would straight away. Boca's in a huge bit of flux right now because you're about to have their club's presidential election, and for any club that has that type of setup, you know how contentious that can get. Multiply that by 1,000, and you get that situation in Argentina. So it's going to be craziness there. You have Gustavo Alfaro, who said after losing to River in the Libertadores that he wanted to finish out the season strong and then go home and get his life back, essentially. There was thought that he might walk away from Boca immediately. Well, now that's not happening, and now it seems like he's kind of reversed course and wants to stay, but I don't know if the club wants him to stay. And you've got presidential candidates who are potentially talking to other managers. It's nuts. So Luciano
it's the
Acosta
Boca and the Beautiful, basically.
What was that?
It's the Boca and the Beautiful, basically. It's its own soap opera.
Oh my goodness. But yeah, something like that. It's a telenovela.
Yes.
We'll see what happens. I think Luciano Acosta would be crazy to go to Boca at this point. He needs to find somewhere else. I don't think he want any part of that right now. This is just too crazy. All right, other updates as we get into the trade window, as we get into the transfer world, as we get into all the chaos. Nicholas Mendola at NBC's Pro Soccer Talk. Giovanni van Bronckhorst, likely to take the NYCFC job. That's not really a surprise. Sources in Holland told Mendola that Van Bronckhorst would be unlikely to accept that job if there was no plan for him to eventually move into a more prominent role inside City Football Group. Many see him as the eventual replacement for Pep Guardiola at Manchester City, which makes you wonder about Mikel Arteta, who has been the number 2 there with Pep and was thought to be that at one point. Arteta doesn't have any senior experience yet, being in the first chair, as they say. Does he need to go get that first, potentially? Then why didn't he go to New York and Van Bronckhorst go to be the number 2 with Pep? Maybe you want to keep them separate. I don't know. It's an interesting thing. I mean, New York City fans, I'm curious as to how they would take it, because this obviously makes it clear that Van Bronckhorst wouldn't be there for very long, which, again, is not crazy talk when you look at the world of international management. You see managers come and go every few years when things are good. When they're not good, they come and go every year or two. This might not end up being any different than that, but it has a different feel straight off. I mean, we're talking about a guy in Van Bronckhorst, beyond his playing pedigree. He won the Eredivisie, and he won 2 cups with Feyenoord. This is not a guy who doesn't have experience. So it's not like he has to go to New York City to get experience to be ready to work in City Football Group. That's not it. It almost feels like okay, well, we've got an opening right now, and I know we're grooming you over here, and I know this is where you want to be long term, and we think you'll be a great fit there too. But we need some help right now over here in New York, and we're going to need you to go take that one for us, take one for the team.
What Nick and I were kind of positing last night as another possible thing is that if Arteta is not pleased with being passed over or isn't pleased with the current ranking system when it comes to Pep, Van Bronckhorst, Arteta, whatever, would he jump to Arsenal if things continue to go south with Unai Emery, where he is regarded as a legend, and could he take over there if he's not happy with the current hierarchical structure with CFG?
It's a huge assumption to say that he's not happy.
True.
I mean, that's a very big assumption to make, and that's the part that there's just no way to know.
So I guess I should refer to it as an if then as opposed to one or the other.
Yeah, I mean, he doesn't have first team experience, and Manchester City's not really the club you want to go to first if you haven't had first team experience.
No.
Would he want to leave the CFG umbrella? because he doesn't get that opportunity that he probably doesn't deserve. It would be, I think, a reckless move for Arteta's career. I think, honestly, what this does to me, what kind of jumps out, is that they think, well, maybe... I don't know. I could go either way. I think definitely they're on the track that Van Bronckhorst is the next guy at Manchester City. Okay. That's fine. That makes sense.
Right.
All right. They think that he's got a lot in common with Pep Guardiola. He can continue along that line. You know, it's another element of who you hire. Like, you're not going to find generally, unless you're just going to promote from within, somebody who will do things the exact same way as the previous manager. It's just very, very difficult. You're talking about different human beings. But Van Bronckhorst and Pep have a lot of similarities, so he can continue that work. You're not going from Pep style to Klopp style, for example. You're not going from Pep style to Mourinho style. You're moving along a line that makes sense. Okay. Does this mean that they think Pep is comfortable for a little while in Manchester and they want to keep Van Bronckhorst working? They don't want him just basically on retainer? Maybe. Does it mean that... Well, I don't know about the or part. I'm leaning more that way, because the or would be, well, they think Pep's going to leave at the end of the year, then why would you have Van Bronckhorst go to New York? Like, that doesn't make any sense.
Well, I wasn't necessarily thinking the end of this year. He's under contract, I think, through 2022. And my thought is that that CFG doesn't think that Pep is going to go to the end of his contract. So what you do is you prepare Van Bronckhorst for whenever.
He managed at Feyenoord. You know, he's managed in Champions League. Like, he's not a nobody here. Like, going to New York, is that going to prepare him more than anything else? I think
keeps him warm in the bullpen until that moment is what I was thinking.
Nah, that's not how it works. You're a manager. You're not having to stay fresh. Like, you can stay fresh by observing and studying and doing a lot of different things. So I think it is a problem-solving mission in New York, and I think it is kind of a, look, we've got you under salary. The job's not going to open up in Manchester yet. We need you to take care of this. And maybe it's just honestly to go to New York for a year and get the process started for whoever could come next. And that could be Arteta.
Yeah.
That could be Van Bronckhorst puts together the staff that he wants to, with the exception of anybody who would carry over when Pep does leave. This gives Van Bronckhorst the opportunity to create his staff, his new staff, because there's always some changes when you go job to job. And then when Van Bronckhorst goes into Manchester, Arteta then comes to New York and gets that first-team experience. Maybe that's the way it goes. Who knows?
Yeah.
I'd be curious to see what New York fans think about it, because I don't think it's news that New York is secondary to Manchester City in the City Football Group portfolio, but this is kind of a reminder that you're not the top priority for your ownership. And doesn't mean it's a bad thing. Doesn't mean it doesn't work out well. I mean, you've seen how Red Bull has been able to manage it, maybe not as much on the New York side, but with Salzburg and Leipzig, how it's all working okay. Everything's copacetic. Can City Football Group create that synergy here? And I think that was the idea with Dome Tarrant initially coming over, because he was Pep's guy. He comes over, put some things in place. Now, in some ways, it's a little bit of a test for Van Bronckhorst to come in and follow up one of Pep's guys. And how does he evolve it? How does he continue it? Maybe it's a little bit of that test. Maybe it's a little bit of that, okay, now you're coming into a team that is played under a style that's very similar to what Pep wants to do. How do you change it? How do you evolve it? And you get a chance to see that firsthand. I would expect that New York City would like to make this hire as soon as possible, but Glenn Crooks had said there wasn't an immediacy here to a hire, which might be a little concerning if you're New York fans. We'll see. Claudio Reyna's in place. He'll be making the decisions on the roster. The manager will come in and work with whoever is there. All right, D.C. from the Washington Post, Stephen Goff. Right now, with the trade window open, D.C. United has nothing in the works at the moment, according to Goff. They're working on re-signing current players. They are seeking a number 10 from abroad to replace Acosta, and they are playing a friendly in the Caribbean on Friday with a mix of first-teamers and others. Probably an opportunity to see some academy guys, an opportunity to see some guys who are on Loudoun United deals, how that looks with any first-team guys that they still have hanging around. So DC, that number 10 from abroad is critical for them. I mean, that's the number one priority of what they need to do.
And, that's, once again, with DC, with all of the gaps, we were talking yesterday about the Eastern Conference and where we would put teams from the question from Andrew Baker. And the losses that DC is having to that roster this season, it's key for them, at least in my view. It's like if you're going to stay in the hunt for whatever playoff position you're hunting for, right now DC would be the number one team that I would sit there and have the most concern about not being in the playoff picture next season. And to replace the guys that you're losing, have that guy to replace Acosta is obviously the key to keeping the fulcrum and one of those originators for the offense in place. So, yeah, I mean, right now you've got to look at what DC's looking at, and if this trip that they're going to have is going to give them some ideas as to what we have in-house, it gives them that gauge as to where you need to go chasing.
I don't know how much of I don't think it's that big. I think it's more about depth. I think you're looking at any Loudoun guys you might sign to MLS deals to be backups. You're not going to go sign a Loudoun guy to come in and be a starter for your MLS team if you're going to make the playoffs next year. Right. Probably not going to happen. So, all right, couple more rumors before we take a break. Colorado Rapids midfielder Cole Bassett, one of their homegrowns, training with Arsenal during the international break on the other side of the pond. Some are calling it a trial. Is it training? Is it a trial? Is it training with a potential to impress? Who knows? But it's a good opportunity for Bassett, a good young player who I've been really impressed with every time I've seen him. I think Bassett's a guy who can eventually play in Europe. Maybe not yet, but this is a good first taste of what that training will look like for him. Also rumors out of Chicago that Joe Ledley, 32-year-old midfielder, last with Derby County, will be joining the Fire for next season. I believe these rumors are originating because there are follows occurring on Instagram and Twitter with Ledley and Chicago Fire people, and Ledley's following the club now and all kinds of stuff. That's actually not a bad way to track this stuff. So we'll see. We'll see about Ledley to Chicago. We're going to take a quick break, come back, talk about the two teams that were in the MLS Cup final, because GMs and presidents have had some things to say about what 2020 looks like for them. We'll get into Seattle and Toronto right after this.
Looking for future leaders we can trust and believe in? Look no further than the high school student athletes right here in Georgia. High school sports teach young people how to be effective leaders. It begins by making their grades and being on time for practice. It includes learning to listen, following directions, accepting responsibility, being a good role model. And it's about respect for officials, opponents, the rules, and each other. The result? It transcends sports. It gives us hope for the future. High school sports. There's so much more than just a game. This message presented by the Georgia High School Association and the Georgia Athletic Directors Association.
Today's show is presented by Appolinsky & Associates, personal injury lawyers with over 30 years of experience, supporters of Atlanta United, Faction, and Inter-Atlanta Youth Football Club. If you've been hurt in a wreck, contact Steve today at steve@aa-legal.com or call in 24/7 at 404-377-9191. The initial consultation is free.
We know that every driver is different, and a one-size policy does not fit all. That's why Country Financial offers a variety of discounts, so you get the coverage you need and the savings you deserve. From good driver to good student, multi-policy to multi-car, we've got a discount to suit every driver. Call Jason Wright at 678-568-6871 today to see what you could save. On Facebook at Jason Wright Agency or by phone at 678-568-6871. Discounts vary by state. Policies issued by Country Mutual Insurance Company, Country Preferred Insurance Company, or Country Casualty Insurance Company, Bloomington, Illinois.
Welcome back. Soccer Down here. November 12th, MLS trade window is open through 8 o'clock tomorrow night. Only one trade on the books as of yet. Ulloa from Cincinnati to Miami. They swapped re-entry draft picks. $50,000 in GAM went to Cincinnati. A third-round pick in the upcoming college draft went to Cincinnati. Not a major move. Still waiting on the reported Darlington Nagbe trade, the reported Dax McCarty trade, the reported Dave Romney trade. So stay tuned. Two teams that were a little busy on Sunday, maybe haven't been as deep into the trade waters as others, Seattle and Toronto. Garth Lagerwey, Seattle Sounders general manager, said, I think because we're in Champions League, I think we'll take a more conservative posture than we might otherwise have. We had the oldest roster in the league this year. If you don't win the title, I think you've got to look at trying to change some things. With Champions League coming up, it's only a 9-week turn in the offseason. I think you look at your vets and you say, can we get one more run out of them? So, Seattle, probably mostly going to stand pat. Toronto, not as much. Bill Manning spoke to the Toronto Sun last night. He's the president of Toronto FC. He said the organization will be looking for another goal scorer in the winter transfer window to complement Josie Altidore. Michael Bradley did not win the match, so he did not get his automatic option trigger done. The word is that Toronto would like to bring him back next season, but not as a designated player. So if they get him as a TAM, or if he doesn't come back, Toronto would use that third designated player slot on a second striker, according to the Toronto Sun. Nicholas Benezet was on loan. Ali Curtis told the Sun that he wants to bring him back. Benezet said he wants to return. There's an option to buy him. Toronto's going to have to figure that part out. Erickson Gallardo, they said they were happy with him. He didn't feature very much for the team after coming over in the summer transfer window. Toronto will have some questions for sure. The second striker thing is really interesting because we've seen Greg Vanney play a lot of 4-2-3-1. He's also played the 3-5-2. In a 4-2-3-1, if you're going to get a second striker, you're going to need somebody who can play out wide in that shape, but when you want to go two up top, can come in and play with Josie. That's a more specific type of player, because then the other thing is if you go 4-2-3-1 and you're bringing this player in, that means Benezet or Gallardo, there's not going to be a spot for them. I'm a little intrigued by the stance that they want another goal scorer, a second striker. I'm wondering, and I could be wrong here. First, you've invested in Gallardo. You've invested in, it looks like, in Benezet. You have Pozuelo, who is best out wide. I think the part about using the third designated player slot on a second striker is not necessarily true. I think that might be the Sun trying to take 2 + 2 and make it equal 5. But do they want a secondary goal scorer? Yes. Now, where does that person going to play with Pozuelo, who's best out wide, with Benezet, who's a winger, with Gallardo, who's a winger? I don't know, because there's only 2 wingers, and that's 3. And if you're going to add a 4th, okay. Is it going to be as a number 10? A central attacking midfielder who can step up and give you some second striker when you want to play 2 up top, but also can play in the midfield behind Josie, but can give you goals? I think most clubs in the world would like to find that player and have them as part of their team too. So, I don't know. I don't know. I'm interested to see what Toronto does. They're in somewhat of a similar boat as Atlanta United in that Atlanta, go back to 2017 when you had Tito Villalba and Miguel Almiron scoring goals along with Joseph Martinez. 2018, Joseph scored more. You still got some goals out of Almiron. This year, there was a huge gap, especially in the league. I mean, your secondary goal scorer overall in all competitions was Julian Gressel with 10. And then it was Pity Martinez with 7. That's a big drop. You need somebody to pick up some goals for you. You'd like to have a second guy who gets you double digits. I think Toronto would like to have that person too. Can it be Pozuelo? I think it could. I think it can. I don't think that's really a huge concern. For Toronto, is it maybe you're looking at a third guy to give you somewhere between 6 to 10? Okay, that's a different conversation than a designated player slot on a second striker that you're not always playing to up top. I'm not so sure about the Suns reporting here is what I'm getting at. And I think that Toronto's one to keep an eye on because these things don't really make much sense with what you currently have and what you're going to do in the long term. I don't know. I'm wondering about Toronto at the moment with those comments.
Yeah, no, I think that your interpretation is where it needs to head because I was trying to draw it out on a piece of paper as you were talking and laying players out and figuring what it could look like with the 4-2-3-1. And yeah, I mean, right now with Pozuelo, Benezet, and Gallardo, you're at a +1 if you're trying to do things formationally a certain way. So no, I think that you're looking for another goal scorer that can help out Josie / Pozuelo and be that third option, or if Pozuelo is that guy that you think is going to get 10 plus in a full season because we saw what he could do at Toronto FC. So yeah, I think that your interpretation is the way to play here.
Pozuelo played pretty much a full season, so I mean, I think we know what Pozuelo's going to give you. He's one of the best players in the league. That's not the issue. It's just if you're looking for a secondary goal scorer, do you think Pozuelo overperformed his goal scoring this year, that he's not going to give you that many on a regular basis? All right, maybe. I don't know. I'm just not sure how it all fits together. So we'll have to see what Toronto does long term. And I think the biggest thing for Toronto is, what are you going to do with Michael Bradley? Because he's been the focal point of your team since he arrived. And I thought he had a great MLS Cup final. Thought he was outstanding in the final. But how much can you commit to him in salary? How much is he going to want? And what's the market out there if you don't re-sign him? Because in the league, you're going to have to trade his rights because I believe he's out of contract. I think it was an option that was triggered if they won MLS Cup. It doesn't sound like there was an option that was a choice for Toronto. And even if there was, I'm assuming it's at a number they don't want to sign him at. So they're going to have to renegotiate. And Bradley has said in the past, or at least I don't think he's ruled it out, that he would take a TAM deal to stay in Toronto. He loves the city. I don't think he's looking to just leave to go make as much money as he can. I think he loves the city. I think his family loves the city. His son was born there. So I think if they can find a number that makes any kind of sense here, he's going to stay. And how long is the question? Are you going to sign him to a 2-year deal with an option and see how he is at the end of the 2? Is it going to be 1 with an option? I don't know. But he's critical to Toronto. I don't think they can afford to lose him right now.
And it's 6.5 Canadian, so basically it comes out to 4.5-ish American dollars, and the contract was thought to be expiring at the end of the year.
Yeah, it's expiring at the end of the year. There's no thinking about it because there was the thing about the option that would be picked up for 2020 if he won MLS Cup at 6.5 tells you that it's up. So there's no contract. He's out of contract. The question is there an option that is a choice from the club? I'm going to assume that even if there is, it's going to be at a designated player number. And I don't think they want to sign him as a designated player number. And according to the Sun and according to previous reporting, they don't want a designated player deal for him. So you're going to have to renegotiate a new deal.
Yeah, so that's what we're looking at where Bradley's concerned, and I know that there would probably be a number of teams in MLS, if Bradley doesn't sign with Toronto, that would like to pick him up to be that fulcrum in the middle of things come next season.
Possibly. I mean, I think there's teams that he fits. I think there's teams that don't necessarily fit there too. So it's not an easy just, oh yeah, he could go anywhere. No, I think there's certain teams.
He's got to fit.
Yeah, it's like any player, but I think he's a player who only fits into certain styles of play at this stage of his career. He needs to be on a team that is ball dominant, that is going to have a lot of the ball and plays through their midfield to create things. So New York City would be one where he could sit and be that piece in possession that you build through. Atlanta, go ahead. People are going to freak out, but yes, Doug Robertson had it in his piece of players who you could look at. Sure, I think he would fit for what you want to do here. I think it's not the best fit because to leave Toronto, I think he's only going to take a designated player deal, and Atlanta's not going to do that. Are there clubs who might? Maybe.
Yeah.
I think the best fit for him as a player and as a person is to stay in Toronto.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's going to happen. I'd be shocked if it doesn't.
Yeah, that for me is what you're saying is for me just, yeah. So I think the best thing for Bradley, both personally and professionally, is to continue his career in Toronto, and I'm fairly certain that they'll figure something out. Although I would like to see what it ends up being at the end of the day. I'm fairly confident that he'll end up hanging there.
Yeah, I think that's the easy thing. Are you able to pull up Twitter, or do I need to since your computer hates you?
Yeah, no, I've got Twitter.
All right, let's get to Twitter for a little bit.
Ricky Ricardo's biggest thing from Ricky this morning wanted to know if there was any updates on conference realignment for 2020, specifically dealing with Nashville, because we've seen Nashville in the Western Conference when it comes to the National Hockey League. Yes, it looks a little weird, but do we know how things are going to lay out in 2020 yet?
No, they haven't said anything. So we have no way to know. I think it'd be stupid to put Nashville in the West and not put Chicago in the West. If you put Chicago in the West, you gain home and aways in the current format with Minnesota for Chicago, which I think is a good thing. And you gain home and aways with Nashville and Atlanta, which is a good thing. You also gain home and aways with Nashville and Cincinnati, which is a good thing. So you would be taking away a lot of good things just to put Nashville in the West, just to put them in the West. I think you're better off, instead of saying, well, Miami and Nashville are new, so one has to go east, one has to go west. That's a dumb way to do business, in my opinion. Move Chicago over. It makes more sense for everybody. Chicago then gets home and aways with Kansas City as well. Eventually, you would think St. Louis would be there. Chicago and St. Louis hate each other in all sports, so let them hate each other in MLS too. And you get Atlanta, Nashville, and Nashville, Cincinnati with rivalries that I think will be good as well. So it'd be dumb to put them in the West. I hope they don't do it.
Couple of things involving Atlanta United, gossip, rumor, innuendo with the window open. Coming off of the report that we were talking about yesterday involving Corinthians, Barco, and Piti, El Mataflow said, Junior Sornosa and all the money in exchange, or we riot. Those are his terms for hashtag Tuesday Thoughts for those two.
It's not going to happen. Corinthians is not going to exchange a player, and I don't think Corinthians is going to break their transfer record twice in the same window on two players, when I think last window they spent around $6 million. I don't think they're all of a sudden going to spend $35 to $40 million out of the blue on one player that would have resale value for them, because Corinthians is in that mode too. They want to develop players and sell them. That's how they make money. They also want to win Copa Libertadores, and they want to be that team as well. Yes, they're at that kind of stage, but it doesn't make a whole lot of sense for them to spend this kind of money to bring players in. I don't see it. I'm not buying it as a whole, especially for both of them. That's what makes no sense to me.
Because realistically, you're looking at a starting point of, what, 45 million US?
I just said 35 to 40. I mean, like, it's somewhere in that ballpark. Who knows? I mean, that's the thing. We don't really know what these markets are, but I don't think you're not getting both of them for anything less than 35 at a bottom end.
Nathan Pugh has an international question.
Okay.
I always wonder what happens on international duty when players are club rivals. Spain was able to overcome it with deep club and political divides. Sterling versus the almighty Gomez for England, not as much. Do we know any other big actual scuffles in the past?
I don't think Spain was able to deal with it that effectively. It did become an issue for Spain with how contentious it got between Madrid and Barcelona. In the early 2010s is when it got really bad. I mean, relationships were ruined for a long time. I don't know if they've recovered between players who were on opposite sides of that, which is really sad. I don't think this Sterling and Gomez thing is anything like that. Sterling's comments this morning were, pretty much like, hey, let's not blow this out of proportion. Let's push forward and support the team as we're supposed to. He's taking his medicine. I don't know. Like, does this happen? Sure. Does it happen to this degree? Not a ton. Will it happen again? Absolutely. Will it ever happen with the U.S.? That would be the question, is do you get a rivalry in MLS to that point that it's that contentious that you have those kind of moments? I don't think you'll get a rivalry like that, but will you get two individuals that can't stand each other because of things that happen in matches? Yeah. And that's the challenges for a national team manager, is managing those personalities, because generally when you bring guys into a national team setup, they're the big dogs on their clubs, and you can't have a whole team of big dogs. That's tough to manage. That's tough to keep them all on the leash. It's tough to walk them down the street because they're all wanting to go in different directions. You have to find a way to manage it, and you also have to have players who are willing to be in different kinds of roles in the national team. So it'll happen. It does happen. I think the Spain one was one that got talked about a lot around that time. This one, I guess, was a little bit of a surprise, but ultimately I don't think it's going to end up being that big of a deal. I really don't.
Tafka had a question regarding what we were talking about yesterday about the game day experience and what to do when it comes to broadcast. He says, read the game day pre-match telecast needs for MLS. I'd love to see a morning show where announcers discuss both the USL Championship, scheduled for the same day at an earlier time, and a discussion of the marquee MLS match. More thoughts, but not enough characters. Thoughts?
Would it attract anybody? And that's the tough question. I mean, because when you look at morning shows for the Premier League, they're not talking about the championship. And when you look at morning shows for La Liga, they're not talking about the second division. Liga MX, not talking much about Ascenso. It's not common. So it's two different worlds. I think it's a nice idea, but I don't think there's actually a market big enough for it. It would be more of a niche type of thing to have that level of coverage. And MLS and USL Championship, more importantly, are two separate businesses. So they partner. I don't think including it in any kind of an MLS structure would be valuable to MLS. If it's an MLS preview show with an MLS TV partner, would it be valuable to MLS to have a discussion about the USL Championship and the matches coming up? No, I don't think it would. Would it be important to look at players who are on loan from MLS clubs to USL Championship clubs, whether partner clubs or owned clubs or what, and what their progress is? Sure. That's a different storyline, but I just don't think it's there. And I think this is sometimes where, when we look at things from a soccer perspective and being so deeply ingrained in it, it's like, yeah, this would be a great idea. the thing about a game day format type of show would be to attract less hardcore folks, to explain to them why this is a big deal, to show them why this is a big deal, to attract them to the product. USL Championship would not attract them to the product. It wouldn't fit with that stated goal. So it'd be great for something like us if we could do it and talk about it, because I think we have people who would be interested. But even with a show like us, like, I don't know if it would move the needle. I think there's a place for coverage of it, but you also can't throw everything into one bit of coverage. And we found that with this show. I mean, this show, when we started doing it, it was really trying to talk about Atlanta United, but shoehorn everything else into it. And from listener feedback, from the questions we get, from comments we get, it has been obvious that people wanted more of the Atlanta United coverage. And we do that. That means we still do the other content, but we do it in separate ways. So it's there. It's there for people who want it, because there are plenty of people who want the coverage of USL League One and USL Championship and college locally and so on and so forth. But you can't always put it all into the same box. And that would be my concern with something like that. I think to do a proper MLS match day morning show, it needs to focus on MLS. It needs to focus on the game of the day. It needs to hit the storylines from the other games, check-ins with the other games and other big storylines around the week. But it needs to be, look at how wild this environment is for this game. Look at how big of a deal this game is. If you're new to this, these are the storylines. These are the players to watch. This guy's playing really well. This guy's trying to bounce back. These two guys don't like each other. These two teams don't like each other, so on and so forth. When you take a step further than that to go into the second division, I think you're going to lose people.
Sports Media Watch has, and we do have another question to finish the hour, but I wanted to get to this first. Sports Media Watch has the fast national ratings for MLS Cup. And Sunday averaged a combined 1.27 million viewers across ABC, Univision, and 2NA, down 28% from last year's Saturday night final on Fox and Unimas. And Atlanta Portland had 1.76 million, but up 15% from the 2017 final between the same teams in a similar afternoon window on ESPN, Unimas, and 2NA at 1.11 million. Seattle's win averaged 823,000 viewers on ABC alone, peaking at 1.09 million from 4:45 to 5 o'clock. And that's what Sports Media Watch has when it comes to the ratings for MLS Cup.
Well, there's multiple things at play here. And depending on how you feel about MLS is going to depend on how you write your headline and how you discuss it. And I've already seen the people who think MLS is a bad TV property or have agendas otherwise that have spun it one way. You knew it was going to be down, first off, because of who was in it. You have a Canadian team in a U.S. ratings pool, and go ask the NBA about the effect that the Raptors being in the NBA Finals had on ratings. They dropped. You're taking a U.S. market out of the game. I mean, it's common sense. So it dropped. Okay. Other things that were at play. It's a Sunday afternoon match in the middle of the NFL season versus a Saturday night match at the end of the college football season. There's no college football to compete with on the Saturday night last year. There's no NFL to compete with in that window either, I don't think. If there was, it was one game. Okay. Different conversation between Fox and ABC. Different conversation between Univision and Unimas as well. Univision ratings were up versus last year on Unimas. That's an important thing. Again, you're talking about a difference between two channels too. Just like if you compared ESPN to ABC, if you compared FS1 to Fox, so on and so forth, Unimas to Univision, you're getting an upgrade there. Your ratings were up in Spanish language, and that's really important. In the Seattle market, it was the best rating that they've ever had in Seattle, in that market, the best MLS Cup rating. So better than 2016, better than 2017 in Seattle. That's a huge positive. The question is going to be, and this was the one when the playoff format came, it was the one when the calendar came. Are you going to be able to make this work, having the final at this time of year with this crowded of a sports TV landscape? Because Saturday night, out the window now, unless you're going to be on FS1 maybe. And you don't want to be on FS1 for your final. Because it's just the ratings aren't there. Compare the regular season matches, FS1 to ESPN. It's a huge difference. You're not getting Saturday night on ESPN. You're not getting Saturday night on Fox. You're not getting Saturday night on ABC on November 10th. So if this is the best you can do, then this is the best you can do. Could you get a Sunday night on Fox? Maybe?
Yeah.
I don't know what their non-sports programming is on Sunday night off the top of my head. I think
Animation Domination, I think.
Yeah, and that's ratings. I mean, I think your best bet in this window when you go back to Fox next year is going to be a 6 o'clock kickoff. And here's my way I would lay it out if I'm Fox. And Fox, go ahead and take this and use it, and that's fine. Kick me a couple bucks later on. All right. So you have to make sure it's a Sunday, and you have to coordinate with your NFL crew to where you have the 1 o'clock. You have only one window. You have your 1 o'clock window. So your NFL window with your post game going to end at 5 o'clock. Accurate? Fair? I mean, with your post game, with the game running to 4:30ish or so, you can be out at 5.
Yeah, and then you do the OT, and then it'll take you to 5 o'clock if you opt as Fox to just do a single header that day.
You do. Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. You have to do that. You do your till 5 o'clock. You have a little bit of wiggle room if things get really weird, and get out at 5:15, 5:20, whatever. That gives you pregame on Fox. That takes you to a 6 o'clock kick. You've got a buffer there in case things get weird with your NFL game. 6 o'clock kick. You're out at 8, or worst case, you're out at 9. You still get some of your animation block, and you can throw your post game to FS1. That gives you the best of both worlds. I think it would be your best way to get ratings on Fox if that's the case. You can tie it into your NFL coverage, and remember, Fox did that a couple times in the last couple years, where they did the NFL lead in into MLS, or vice versa, depending on the regional games that were picked up. And it worked pretty well for them. They were pretty happy with that. So if you're able to do that next year with your final and do a Sunday 6 o'clock kick, you have a pregame built in, but you have wiggle room on your pregame cup. You can throw your pregame to FS1 if you have to. If the NFL game runs long, it can start on FS1. You can carry it over. That type of stuff is more common now. I think you can make it work. I think you can make it work, and it could have great success. And I think that's what you're going to have to look at now, because you don't have the windows that you would ordinarily have to work with. We'll get into more of that. We'll get into more of strategy stuff. We'll get into more rumor, innuendo, questions from you guys on a Tuesday Thoughts edition right after this.
A ranger station.
I'd like to report a bear hug.
Okay.
I put out my campfire and Smokey Bear hugged me.
So you drowned the fire, you stirred it, drowned it again, and felt that it was cold?
Uh-huh.
Yep, he's just letting you know you did good.
Bear hug from Smokey Bear. Status update.
I'm gonna let you go now. There are many ways to start a fire, but one sure way to put it out. Learn how you can do your part at SmokeyBear.com.
Sponsored by the U.S. Forest Service, Ad Council, and your state forester.
As a business owner, you know that every year brings new challenges and opportunities. The success of your business demands expertise and focus. And Country Financial can help you keep that focus by helping ensure you have the right insurance protection in place to meet your goals. Jason Wright can help you create a customized insurance plan that has coverages designed just for your business. Give Jason a call at 678-568-6871 or reach him on Facebook at Jason Wright Agency. Coverages vary by state. Policies issued by Country Mutual Insurance Company, Bloomington, Illinois.
This is what matters. This is beyond X's and O's. This is the difference mutual respect makes. This is what character looks like. This is what defines us in Georgia. This is sportsmanship. School sports. It's not the outcome that matters most, but the way the games are played. This message presented by the Georgia High School Association and the Georgia Athletic Directors Association.
If you've been hurt in a car wreck, contact my friend Steve Apolinski of Apolinski and Associates. He's been representing individuals for over 30 years throughout Georgia and Alabama. Email him at steve@aa-legal.com or call him 24/7 at 404-377-9191. The initial consultation is free.
You're listening to Soccer Down Here daily on SDH Networks, a division of OSG Sports. Find us at Soccer Down Here on Facebook and Twitter. The time is now the top of the hour. Peep, y'all.
Welcome back, Soccer Down Here, November 12th edition. Jason Longshore, John Nelson with you this morning. Digging into all the news, rumor, innuendo around silly season for MLS, talking TV ratings, talking formats, talking schedules, talking conference structures, talking all kinds of stuff while we wait on trades to be officially announced. There are 3 that are in the queue, I guess is the best way to put it, with the reported Darlington Nagbe trade to Columbus, the reported Dave Romney trade to Nashville, the reported Dax McCarty trade to Nashville. Did see Victor Ulloa move from Cincinnati to Miami yesterday. The window's open through 8 o'clock tomorrow night. There are some other things going on, and a really big one this morning at ESPN. An investment group, including Spain World Cup winner and former NYCFC forward David Villa, has been granted a USL franchise in New York City. Queensboro FC will begin play in 2021 in the USL Championship. It'll host its home matches in a new modular stadium at York College in Queens that will have a capacity of around 7,500. The team will also play select home matches at Citi Field, home of the New York Mets.
Well, I mean, USL is always looking to work their way into larger markets. I know that San Francisco is looking to have one in a couple of seasons, or at least it's supposed to be coming in. I want to say that was it East Bay, I think, is 2021 as well.
Reportedly.
So you're looking at, once again, a league that is going into larger and larger markets and getting into its larger and larger footprints. And this is I want to see how this plays out with the modular stadium on campus and see what the response is for Queensboro. But when I saw the news come across from Jeff Carlisle this morning, I was legitimately intrigued about it. So let's see what they do between now and then to get this thing online.
Yeah, it had been rumored for a while, but now ESPN making it official that it will be happening. Okay, other news around the country at the moment. There is a trademark that has been filed by the NWSL for Proof Louisville FC. Okay. Proof Louisville FC as the name of the NWSL team, potentially. I'll wait and see what things look like, but that's an odd name for a team.
I mean, the first thing that popped into my head was bourbon and 80 proof, 90 proof, that kind of thing.
Sure. It's
so
bourbon.
that was the only thing that I could come up with in the 12 seconds after you mentioned it. So that's the only thing that popped into my head as to where that might come from.
I don't care where it came from. It doesn't matter. Does it make any sense? Does it work? It's yet to be determined. I mean,
yes.
Sure, I get it, where it came from, but they're not calling the team Jim Beam FC or anybody else. Like, it's Proof Louisville FC. I don't know. We'll see what they do with the branding of it. That sounds very strange to me. Chattanooga FC announcing a new general manager this morning. Press conference is at 11 at Finley Stadium, but the Chattanooga Times Free Press has broken the news. Jeremy Alumbaugh, who has been the general manager with St. Louis FC of the USL Championship since March of 2014, he will be the new GM of Chattanooga FC. Sheldon Grizzle, co-founder of Chattanooga FC, stepped down, and it's Alumbaugh who will take over. He said, a lot of times as a coach or leader, you come in when things aren't going well, the team has been losing, or the team is not doing well at the gate. Chattanooga FC is obviously the opposite. They've done amazing things here, and this is an opportunity I could not pass up. When you look at some of the instability let's be fair, inconsistency with NISA, which is where Chattanooga is moving into to play next season, this is a really good move because this is a person who's coming from a very stable organization to take this job. St. Louis FC has been a really solid club at the USL Championship level, and to move from there to here is a big deal. I think it's a big move for Chattanooga FC. Tim Kelly, their chairman, said, Jeremy's qualifications were far and away a dream fit for us. This is really the last piece of the puzzle. We can take a deep breath and say we have what we need to succeed as a professional club. He has the depth of management experience that there is no question he can help take the club to the next level. And that's the challenge for a club like Chattanooga, for Detroit City, for others who are moving up from an amateur level, even if it is a well-run, well-organized amateur club to a professional club. It's a completely different world. So he will be a big help with Chattanooga making that jump. He was also the DOC for the St. Louis Scott Gallagher Club, which is one of the biggest youth clubs in the country, an assistant coach at Southwest Missouri State and Southern Illinois University as well. So he's got the soccer background on the touchline combined with the soccer background in the office. Great fit for Chattanooga FC. It's a great hire. It's as good of a hire as you could possibly get for that club and what they need.
Yeah, no, when you were rolling over the resume, I'm like, okay, you check off that box, you check off that box, you check off that box. And as Kelly says, you want to get to the next level, you bring in somebody who has that three-dimensional kind of experience. And now you're looking forward to seeing what Chattanooga FC has in mind and what those next steps are and what they entail, regardless of the level of engagement that you're talking about.
All right, we got updates from Nashville. Trade is official. Dax McCarty is officially part of Nashville SC. And pulling up the press release right now. Give me a second. We'll see if both are official or if just the Dax deal has been officially announced. Dax McCarty is the one that has been made official. Let's get the release so we get the official terms. It was reported at $100,000, and that's what it looks like. All right. Club is acquired. Nashville SC has acquired Dax McCarty from the Chicago Fire. $50,000 in GAM, $50,000 in TAM, second-round pick in the 2021 Super Draft, so not the current one. First move for Nashville during the trade window. Mike Jacobs, GM for Nashville, said, Dax is a proven leader and winner and has done so in every club he's been in throughout his career. He embodies the character and values of what our club will be on and off the field. McCarty, the obligatory statement, and I think Dax is a pretty genuine guy. He says, I couldn't be more excited to be joining Nashville SC for the club's inaugural MLS season and beyond. The buzz around the club is easy to feel and see. The opportunity and challenge of building something special from the beginning will be a unique experience that I feel privileged to be a part of. I can't wait to get to Nashville and start preparing for the 2020 season. Great addition. I love it for a team that wants to establish an identity, for a team that needs veteran leadership and somebody who has been there and done that in this league. Dax McCarty's the perfect get for them. And they didn't have to give up too much. I mean, that's reasonable to get him. I think being 32 is probably the reason you're talking about $100,000 in allocation money versus the amounts that have been spent for other players in similar positions. But feels like a really good move for Nashville. I'm assuming Chicago was just ready to move on and free up spots and free up salary and Now they can do that, and we see what Chicago does to replace him, but Nashville gets a proven leader in McCarty.
8th player on their roster, as we were discussing at the beginning of the window. Daniel Rios, Cameron Lancaster, David Accam, whom Dax McCarty has some playing history with, Derek Jones, Anibal Godoy, Hani Mukhtar, and Randall Leal.
Yeah, McCarty played with Accam for a little bit.
Yep.
Nice bonus, I guess. But McCarty being that leader in the middle of the park, and the way that Gary Smith likes to play in a 3-5-2, you need that number 6 role to be very, very important. Now you have a few different options there with McCarty, with Anibal Godoy, with Derek Jones, who give you different combinations. You could play all 3 together with Jones in front of the other 2. You could play 2 of the 3. I think McCarty will be likely your first captain for Nashville and MLS. I think that's why you go get him now when you make that move. It feels a lot like the Michael Parkhurst kind of move for Atlanta when they launched. It feels like that kind of smart veteran presence that can set the tone for the team from day one. Gwen's a huge Dax McCarty fan.
She likes the move of Dax McCarty to Nashville. A couple of questions on Twitter if you want to hit that, unless there's other news in the queue that you want to hit.
Let's hit the questions on Twitter.
All right. From the discussion from hour number 1 about secondary goal scorers, Shiva wanted to know if you would consider Barco our secondary goal scorer, and do we know if he'll be out again in 2020 with Argentina for an extended period of time?
Well, he wasn't out with Argentina for an extended period of time. It was just the U20 World Cup. It shouldn't have been as long as he was out, because the injuries is what really forced him out for an extended period of time. There is the potential for the Olympics in 2020, and I think he would have that opportunity to go if he's chosen, and I think he would be. Miles Robinson, I think, will also be out for the U.S. with the Olympics if they qualify. Both have to qualify still, and that's definitely not a guarantee either way. But, yeah, I think both of those guys will miss time with the Olympics when that happens. Barco's not a secondary goal scorer, in my opinion. I think Barco is a playmaker, and he'll get a few goals for you. I think Pity Martinez is more of a secondary goal scorer. Gwen is chiming in on the Barco talk because she, of course, that's what she does. She gets
She's it. So she likes Barco and Dax McCarty is what you're saying.
Yes. But no, Barco's not a secondary goal scorer. Pitty's more of a secondary goal scorer than Barco. Barco's going to be more of an assist guy. And you just hope he stays healthy. I mean, that's the biggest thing here is you want him to stay healthy and not miss a bunch of time due to injury, because that's going to be the biggest question for him in 2020. He will miss time with Argentina during the Olympics, which is not during a FIFA window completely, although there is going to be a little bit of overlap this time around, which is helpful. But we will see. I just don't think he's a secondary goal scorer. I think he's more of like a third or fourth goal scorer for your team.
Jorge B. with a question. Did the injuries to Miles and Josie intimately cost a possible league title to Atlanta and Toronto?
Sure. I mean, that's the game. Like, you can't put guys in bubble wrap all the time. The Miles one, I think, is less of an impact, honestly, because I don't think defensively and specifically from the center back was the problem for Atlanta in the Toronto game. I think both times it wasn't a center back who you would have been asking to close down those shots, and both shots are low percentage, and you had a ton of chances to win that game that had nothing to do with a center back, and you had 2 clean sheets otherwise. So the Miles one hurts you, but I don't think it costs you. Josie not being healthy for Toronto cost them because they didn't have a like-for-like replacement for him. And that's something that, they did the best they could, and it was amazing to get to the final, but you're not the same team without Josie Altidore.
And Ricky Ricardo with a question having to do with the laws of the state of Georgia.
Okay.
Thoughts on Atlanta's pro sports teams coming together to get sports betting legalized in the state of Georgia?
good. I think it's a good thing. I'm curious to see what kind of timeline we're talking about and how this ends up looking. But, yeah, it feels like a no-brainer to me. I mean, I'm thinking back to all the talk at one point of Underground Atlanta being a casino and different things. I mean, horse racing has come up multiple times in different parts of the state, and it's always been something that's been pushed back on. This, I mean, it feels like a no-brainer to me. I don't know. I understand people's concerns about gambling and all of that, but I think it's overblown. So to give the update on what's going on here, Darren Eales joined team presidents of the Braves, Falcons, and Hawks to urge Georgia lawmakers to legalize betting on games. It's from the AJC, and our friend Joe Patrick wrote this up over at Dirty South Soccer as well. There's a nonprofit now called Georgia Professional Sports Integrity Alliance, Inc., which filed with the state on October 3rd. So this group sent a letter to state lawmakers urging them to allow bets on games that can be made online and on cell phones. We know around the world it's typical. Sports betting is a common thing. I mean, look at, uniform sponsors in England to see every betting company that you can imagine that's on a jersey for a team.
Yep.
It's legal in certain parts of the United States already, just not everywhere. The argument from the Georgia Professional Sports Integrity Alliance is that the teams are not going to make profits directly from these wagers. They're saying that allowing fans to make bets would increase their engagement with the various teams. And I 100% agree with that. I mean, right or wrong, legal or under the table, gambling on the NFL is a big part of why the NFL is the biggest league in the United States and one of the biggest in the world in any sport.
Think of fantasy football.
Well, that's different. That's a completely and utterly different thing than what we're talking about right now. So push that to the side. Gambling on the games, picking a winner, picking against the point spread. Jimmy the Greek being on NFL Today for as long as he was and talking about point spreads. Just saying. Brent Musburger.
The intangibles.
You could always tell where the line was with Brent Musburger when he called a college game because it drew people's interest and engagement. It's a huge part of it. And to say that it's not, I mean, you're fooling yourself. So to have it, for MLS especially, I think it's huge. I think that's the whole missing ingredient for following games that don't involve your team. Because that's the next step for MLS. And we talked about it with the final, but even more so with just any game. Like, okay, El Tráfico resonates with soccer fans, and everybody's going to watch that, and you notice it on social media. The soccer community is watching El Tráfico. Okay. Are they watching a game between New York City and the Red Bulls? No, they're not watching it in the same way. Those ratings haven't been good. Are they watching a great game in the same way between New York City and Atlanta? Nope, not the same as El Tráfico. El Tráfico's got a story. If the gambling element becomes part of that, and people are, okay, the big game Sunday night, it's Atlanta and New York City. Well, it's a big game, first off, and that's going to get me a little intrigued. And there's some really compelling stories here about who's favored, who's not favored, what the record is between these two teams, what their last 5 games, all the basic stuff that you're talking about when you're getting into this. It would increase engagement. Don Garber's talked about it from the MLS side. He said it last year at his State of the League with Atlanta and Portland. He said, if people are going to do it, you might as well manage it, organize it. You might as well generate tax revenue for it and find ways that the league could use it as a marketing tool to have people engage more with our players and our clubs. At the end of the day, the most important thing for Major League Soccer as it relates to the potential of legalized sports betting is not necessarily revenue-driven. It's how do we engage more and more fans to participate, to get closer to our teams, to participate more deeply in our games. Adam Silver has said things very similar about the NBA. They've been out in front of it. I think MLS has tried to push their way to be out in front of it. smart moves all the way around, because last time I checked, Fox now has a sports gambling show in their afternoon block. ESPN has one that is, I think it's on ESPN News, but it's in their afternoon block as well. Lots of different, sports radio or internet radio. Musburger's VSIN is doing really well on Sirius XMFC. There's, I think we're past the point that it's the old school way of looking at it in the 80s, that it's, back rooms and smelly cigars and, underhanded stuff. It's not that anymore. So the leagues, you want to drive that engagement.
No, I'm right there with you. I mean, considering that VSIN, as an example, VSIN, when they do their programming, they're doing games and they're breaking things down to plays. When you look at overseas betting and you look at how they're doing things with soccer, you're looking at, Sky Bet and Bet365 and all of those places. It is literally taking the game in pieces and plays and all of the different prop bets and getting engagement and getting folks to sit there and come to the table, and their interest is increased because of their own vested interest in the match and outside of fandom, that it's now attached to your wallet. So no, it makes complete and total sense for MLS to try to hop on this and try to have it as a part of its normal everyday conversation. We do it when it comes to looking at games and things like that. And because we understand that there are folks who are interested in that particular aspect of it as well. It's not just looking at it from wins and losses. So no, we recognized it early on too.
Yeah. It's an easy way to talk about games and talk about games outside of your bubble. So it's something that people are used to, and it's something that drives engagement. It's an important thing. And as they said in the article over at the AJC, Maya Prabhu from the AJC wrote it. One of the quotes from the letter that was sent by the team presidents to lawmakers was, "Georgia is the 12th largest state for illegal wagering. It is not going away. That is why we must ensure the industry is above board and transparent." And that's the other element to it that has always been brought up, and the concern side is, now is the integrity of the competition going to remain? Well, you have to put those things in place, and you have to be strong about that. USL, for example, signed a partnership with a company that works to measure and ensure the integrity of its competitions. They're going to be looking for anything that could be sketchy. They're going to be looking for any of that. As long as you're doing that, and as long as you're cracking down on that and making sure that it doesn't happen to begin with, you're good. You have the rules in place. It's not like players or fans or anybody can go to Vegas and place a bet. So why are we doing the silly charade where it's, okay, if you're in Vegas, you go make this bet, but you can't do it anywhere else, or you only do it in limited spots, and now more and more are allowing it. Just let's move into the 21st century, please.
No, and I know that the WNBA was confident in their monitoring of it when they placed the Connecticut franchise inside the Mohegan Sun Casino. So, they recognized it early on as well, and they had the confidence that they could keep an eye on players and quote unquote undue influences and anything that could turn things sideways. So, no, it makes complete and total sense. That I did not know that the state of Georgia was 12th when it came to illegal wagering, because all the opportunities that the state has turned aside to take advantage of all of the revenue that could be placed in the state and reinvested in the state. Did not know that Georgia's 12th, but doesn't surprise me.
I'm sorry, some of the comments here. So a lobbyist with the Georgia Faith and Freedom Coalition said she was disappointed that Atlanta's teams were pushing for sports betting. And this is the quote. It's sad that these great American pastimes want to bring in the predatory gambling business to take advantage of their fans. Didn't Pete Rose get thrown out of baseball for gambling? But now, for the sake of more revenue, these teams are ready to drop their pants, and hardworking Georgians will be on the hook for the havoc it wreaks, both socially and economically. All right, first off, let's just break this whole thing down. Revenue's not coming to the teams directly. That's first off. That's the clear. Like, the teams are not doing this in that way. Pete Rose getting thrown out of baseball for gambling. Well, there was a rule that you couldn't gamble.
You couldn't do it.
Like,
and he bet against his own team.
No, I don't. Has that ever been confirmed? Because always it was that he didn't bet against his own team. It didn't matter because you couldn't bet, period. Like, that was part of the contract. So you broke the contract.
And he wasn't even
betting.
Good at it.
Yeah, but he didn't bet against the Reds, I think, is what was generally accepted. I don't know if that's changed over the years because Pete seems to tell a bunch of different stories depending on the day.
But yeah, he wasn't even very good at it.
Like, he wasn't throwing games. He wasn't kicked out for throwing games. And that's what basically the insinuation here is. That's a different conversation. That wasn't the case. It was, you can't do it. You did it. Bye.
Yeah,
like,
and you're done. Yeah.
That's simple. Anyway, you're going to get those types of comments is what it is. I think it's the 21st century in those. You have to move on. And I do think from an MLS perspective, since that's what we focus on here in this show, is the soccer world, soccer down here, I think it would be a benefit for the league because it would generate engagement across the board for the league. It'd be a good thing overall. So we'll see. We'll see if it happens. I don't know. You're going to have people pushing back because of, in my opinion, outdated norms that they're going to point to. And I think we're past all that. I think it's going to be a good thing for the league if they do it. It's going to be a good thing for all the leagues if they do it.
No, I mean, that's how I'm viewing this, is that it should be a good thing for engagement. Yeah, and a good thing for engagement when it comes to fans, but a good thing for the state when it comes to revenue because of all of the opportunities in the past, like I said, that were lost to try to drum up revenue that, I mean, places like Alabama and Mississippi garnered and understood it, but Georgia has decided not to do it for whatever reason over all this time. And so here's another opportunity for Georgia to step up and get more revenue for the state in a chance of staring you right in the face.
Yeah, I think it's a huge opportunity. We'll see how this goes. But now with all the different presidents, GMs lobbying for it, I'm intrigued to see what the state legislature does in response. We're going to take a quick break, come back, more of your Tuesday thoughts. They can be team-specific, they can be league-specific, they can be big, broad, and general, they can be thought-provoking, they can be philosophical, wherever you want to take it for the last 30 minutes. It's your call, your show. We'll be back with that right after this.
Looking for future leaders we can trust and believe in? Look no further than the high school student athletes right here in Georgia. High school sports teach young people how to be effective leaders. It begins by making their grades and being on time for practice. It includes learning to listen, following directions, accepting responsibility, being a good role model. And it's about respect for officials, opponents, the rules, and each other. The result? It transcends sports. It gives us hope for the future. High school sports. There's so much more than just a game. This message presented by the Georgia High School Association and the Georgia Athletic Directors Association.
Today's show is presented by Appolinsky & Associates, personal injury lawyers with over 30 years of experience, supporters of Atlanta United, Faction, and Inter-Atlanta Youth Football Club. If you've been hurt in a wreck, contact Steve today at steve@aa-legal.com or call in 24/7 at 404-377-9191. The initial consultation is free.
We know that every driver is different, and a one-size policy does not fit all. That's why Country Financial offers a variety of discounts, so you get the coverage you need and the savings you deserve. From good driver to good student, multi-policy to multi-car, we've got a discount to suit every driver. Call Jason Wright at 678-568-6871 today to see what you could save. On Facebook at Jason Wright Agency or by phone at 678-568-6871. Discounts vary by state. Policies issued by Country Mutual Insurance Company, Country Preferred Insurance Company, or Country Casualty Insurance Company, Bloomington, Illinois.
Welcome back. Soccer Down here, November 12th, Tuesday Thoughts edition. Got a few more Tuesday Thoughts out there. What's next on the list?
Well, Rachel Affleck was wondering, really, it seems like a very quiet trade window with not a lot of stuff going on, and she was wondering why that may be.
Oh, who knows? I mean, you've got two other deals that have reportedly been agreed to, so those could... It's not like there's a... they have to go at a certain time if those two are done. So whenever they get announced, they get announced. You've got another 24 plus 10 hours, 9 hours now, so 33 hours. Things can still move. I mean, Houston reportedly was involved in conversations. Orlando, you've got the Dom Dwyer stuff involving Minnesota that's been out there. You've got the Darwin Quintero contract / option not being picked up / maybe moving him somewhere else if there's a team that he would want to go to that they can get a deal done and get who they want back or assets they want back. So I think there's still pieces out there that could move. I mean, the CBA is definitely part of the reason why it's not quite as big as it could be. There's just so much unknown. You don't know what the cap is going to look like. I'm not expecting a huge, crazy departure in rules and allocation money and what they mean and all those types of things for 2020. Now, 2021, sure, could easily happen in the CBA, but I don't think either side is going to be foolish enough to fight for all these dramatic, immediate changes that would change the way the league functions for the year that would then immediately be starting. That would be kind of foolish. So I think going forward, you'll see more action in these windows, especially with more expansion teams. I'm curious why Miami hasn't tried to do a little bit more. Nashville bringing in 2 players in this window, if that's what ends up happening, is a big one. I'm not talking about Miami in general. I'm talking about in the trade window. I'm a little confused as to why they haven't tried to make more moves in the trade window, and maybe they do. We'll see. We'll see what happens with this. I think there's still plenty of time for moves to happen. We'll be still in the window tomorrow morning when we do the show, and I think we'll hear about more stuff by then. So stay tuned. I mean, it's an interesting time, I think, with a lot of change around the league, with 2 new teams coming in, with an expansion draft to worry about, with players whose options you have to make decisions soon on, and that's going to create conversation. Can that conversation turn into deals? That's the part we'll have to wait and see. One quote that jumped out to me this morning from the LA Times, Kevin Baxter, who's at MLS Cup, and some of his reporting on it, talking about designated players. And Baxter said that general managers in places like Chicago and New York and Southern California have felt pressured to sign big-name designated players to compete for fans. Garth Lagerwey in Seattle said about his fans, they want to see good soccer, and they're less interested in the star power. What it allows us to do is spend efficiently. We can get the best player we can afford for our money and then turn them loose. He said, our fans will embrace anybody who's a star for the Sounders. That may not help in the national recognition column, but our fan base is perfectly fine with that. I would say Atlanta's the same. I think you're not needing a big name to satisfy your fan base. I think Atlanta has shown that. I think Seattle has shown that. I think Portland has shown that. I think others that spend money. Toronto. I mean, I think Toronto going out and getting Josie Altidore and Michael Bradley are not big names in the big picture of things, but they were the right players, and they spent money to get them, and they have delivered for Toronto. So other clubs have felt like they've needed to go get a Bastian Schweinsteiger, a Zlatan Ibrahimovic, a David Villa, who delivered on the field, and Andrea Pirlo, who didn't deliver on the field, a Frank Lampard, or Steven Gerrard, so on and so forth. Each market's different, and I think when we look at it, you have to look at the individual market variables in these moves and in these windows. And the trade window is part of it too. I mean, there are clubs who going to make a trade within the league, it might better their team on the field, but is it the move that they need to make for their fan base in their market? Maybe not. Chicago could be a prime example. They traded Dax McCarty away. They didn't get a player back. What does Chicago need to do moving into Soldier Field and to become relevant in Chicago again? I think they need to go get a big name. I think they need a big name. Whereas Seattle doesn't, obviously. Other markets don't. It's different everywhere in this league. It's different city by city, club by club. And that's what makes the league kind of an interesting one to look at from a big picture standpoint.
And I mean, you look at a Houston, and I know that you're looking at New York City, and so the stereotype, and you're compelled, I guess, to try to draw in big names, spend a lot of money, and put that product out there. You look at the Galaxy, you look at NYC. I think that you have teams these days who will sit there and, I mean, Atlanta, if you look at it strictly from a media market perspective, yeah, they're a top 10 media market, but they had a philosophy going in as to who they wanted to attract when it came to players. And it wasn't the biggest names on the board, but inside the philosophy that you have, then you've taken those players and you've done really well with them. So I think that sometimes in a Chicago, in a New York, in a Los Angeles, that you fall into that pitfall of, it's like, okay, we're a big media market, therefore we have to be a big media market team and draw big eyes to ourselves by bringing in big names. And sometimes it doesn't work. And I think that if you have teams that just address things philosophically, like we've seen here and in other places, I think that then you're leading yourself to the possibility of being successful longer than just a short-term bump by bringing in a big name, I would think.
Okay, well, you're preparing Jorge B's questions because he has a couple. One quote from Baxter's piece that grabbed my attention as well. Bruce Arena said this about their new training facility opening and what 2020 looks like for the New England Revolution. Bruce Arena said, "This is the most fun I've had in coaching. It really is a lot of fun, and it's the best facility I've had. That part's great. We're going to have a better team next year. We're headed in the right direction." One, Bruce Arena talking about having fun is weird because he never seems like he's having any fun in anything. But okay, that's cool. The facility, to say it's the best facility he's ever had, he was at the Galaxy, at the former StubHub and former Home Depot Center, and that's a pretty nice place. Just saying. It's good. It's really good for New England to be in this conversation and to have a manager who's been around the block like Bruce Arena say these things about it and be optimistic about where the club's headed. That's great for New England because that's a club that New England becomes a big club in this league and starts drawing 25,000 fans again to Gillette Stadium. These are really good things for MLS if the Revolution are relevant. So good to see. I'm happy to hear that Bruce Arena is happy and having fun.
And let's see, who else had questions? Oh, Gustavo had some thoughts this morning about
Jorge
the Atlanta United roster, actually.
Jorge B. I set it up.
Oh, you want Jorge B stuff? Okay,
that was
got
what
it.
I said, yes.
All right. In your opinion, is the CBA affecting the current lackluster number of trades? I think there's a word missing, of trades around the league. And two, regarding player movement, are the new expansion teams, Miami and Nashville, falling behind the curve, or is this normal for this time of year?
So, I mean, the first one, yeah, I think the CBA is part of it. I do think it's still early in the window, so let's wait and see when the window's done. The expansion teams, are they behind the curve or are they ahead of the curve? I think Nashville's about where you would normally be. Miami, some of it's just down to the expectation level for Miami. It's been a little bit of, man, we thought Miami would be crazy and be signing a bunch of guys and it'd be nuts, and they haven't been. So Miami, I'm trying to think back without pulling up the roster straight away. You go back to Atlanta in 2016 at this time. You had Tata Martino in place. Miami doesn't have a coach yet. You had Tito Villalba in place. They don't have a designated player yet. Pellegrini, I don't think, was a young designated player. I think he's a TAM. Carranza, I believe, was a TAM. So you don't have those things in place yet. Atlanta at this time had Villalba, had McCann, had Jones, had Tambakis, had Junior Burgos that they didn't pick up for 2020. I think that's it. But then right when the season ended, you added Michael Parkhurst straight away in the window that we're currently in. It was shortened. You had gotten Sean Johnson and then traded him because you were getting Brad Gazan. So that was already pretty much in play or done by this stage. Let's see what Miami does before the window's over. The lack of rumors out of Miami has been interesting because it's not like there's been a lot of talk about, all right, these deals are coming in this window. The Ulloa one was the only one, and that's not a huge deal. So Miami's the one that they're getting the eyes emoji right now, and they might get the side-eye gif before Wednesday at 8 o'clock. Just because the expectation level is so high for Inter Miami that, okay, where's the coach? Where's the big moves? Where are they? Don't know.
Yeah. So, yes, the raised eyebrow and the shrugged shoulders are pretty much where I am with Inter Miami on both levels right now. But they've got another 30-some hours to try to get something squared away.
Still don't have a coach. That's the thing that I'm really wondering what's going on.
Yeah, and it's like, what are you thinking? And what's your timetable, which is incredibly, incredibly short? And because you kind of need a coach to figure out your philosophy to bring in your players. And if you don't have a coach, you can't figure out who you want to bring in.
That's not necessarily true. No, you don't have to have a coach to determine your philosophy. No, I disagree with that. You can hire a coach who fits the philosophy you've established. And when you have somebody like a David Beckham who is involved in creating this, he's going to have some pretty strong opinions about the way he wants his team to play. So you're going to hire a coach who fits what the brain trust has decided upon for building this team. Not, well, we have a blank slate. We don't know what we're going to be. Hey, you tell us what we're going to be. Nah, that's not how it's going to work. That's not how good clubs work. Because then it changes. Because as we go back to the first hour conversation, managers come and go. If your identity is completely tied to your manager when he goes, well, then you're screwed. Then you have to go find somebody similar to that manager. You're better off to have your club philosophy and your club way of doing things. And yes, it tweaks and evolves based off who's there because they're going to put their own ingredients into the chili, but it's still chili. You're not going to go from chili to making borscht. That's the thing. You got to have.
No, but you could have really runny
philosophy.
chili.
It's still chili. I didn't say anything about the quality of the chili. So okay, then John, then this is what you would want to do in this world of, all right, you're not going to have a club philosophy. You're going to hire a manager and you're going to say, you tell us how we're going to play completely. You tell us what kind of players you want. Cool. Then that manager leaves in a year. Then what?
Then you're pretty screwed because of what the guy brought in as opposed to what was there ahead of time, yeah?
No, not so much what was there ahead of time, but you have to have a common philosophy. I think the best clubs in the world have a common philosophy. Manchester City chased Pep Guardiola not just because he's a great manager, but because they wanted his philosophy. And yeah, if ultimately he leaves, and he will, because everybody does, and Giovanni Van Bronckhorst is the guy who comes in and replaces him, well, they've identified him because they think he would be the next step, and he would fit, and it wouldn't change everything immediately, and it would be the next step in that evolution. You know, we've talked about it on Soccer Over There a lot. A manager like Carlo Ancelotti has been incredibly successful because he can just go into any situation and adapt to it. He's not rigid tactically. Then there are some managers, and Jose Mourinho, I think, is going through this right now. You know who he is. There are some clubs where he will not work. And if you go sign him to that club, you're changing who you are as a club. And off the field and on. And Real Madrid suffered through that. Because Real Madrid was previously seen as a gentleman's club. And then you got Jose Mourinho like sticking his finger in Tito Villanova's eye. And you've got people having to figure out, well, can I justify this? Can I live with this? Is this acceptable for me? And some people felt that they could, because they thought there would be, you know, great success on the field. It was not as good as people thought. But he doesn't fit everywhere because of that.
No.
Because the best clubs have a common philosophy of the way they want to be, and they're going to hire a manager to fit that. Inter Miami is a new club, but they would be better served. And again, with David Beckham there, you have a soccer guy there who's going to be identifying this. David Beckham's not going to do all this work to then be able to just say, all right, go hire somebody and they'll do all the soccer stuff. No. So they're going to hire a manager who fits, and they need to do it soon. I'm not arguing that, but
I would have thought they would have already needed to do it.
Not necessarily. I mean, they don't play. They're not training yet. So, like, all those things are there. I think people, and we went through this with Atlanta in the early days, went through it again when Tata Martino said he was leaving. The manager's role in most clubs, not all, but most clubs, has nothing to do with bringing in players. Even here, go back to what Frank de Boer said after the loss to Toronto. He's had conversations with Carlos Bocanegra. He's talked about things that he would want to see with this roster, and that's it. It's down to Carlos and Darren Eales to go make those moves. That's how it works with top clubs. It's not the manager who's sitting there then going out negotiating deals. The FIFA video game ain't always real in this case, folks. Peter Vermees does that in MLS. It sounds like Jason Kreis would want to do that if he goes back to RSL. But outside of that, it's just not happening. Do they have input? Sure. Are they making the decisions? No. So I'm surprised because of the talk out of Miami and the expectation out of Inter Miami that you don't have a manager in place and you don't have more players attached yet. But have you ruined your first season because of that? No, you haven't. That's Overreaction Monday talk.
So then, all right, the way that the current schedule is laid out when it comes to assembling teams and players and getting everything squared away so you can be ready for training camp 1. What is your window for getting a coach in place so he can be there with the players that are assembled by the coach and the front office? When does your window close for having somebody in place before you start getting really concerned about how things are going to look for their first season?
Well, I mean, it doesn't close because, it closes day one of training camp. It closes the week before that. Sure. I mean, Frank de Boer was hired, the hiring was made official about a month before training camp opened, maybe slightly less. You were coming into an established team. In this case, the sooner the better. That's why I think in a perfect world you've already had it. But like, there's not like a time where the window closes and you don't have a coach. Like, it's not like that. it's just you have to deal, and the longer you wait, the more complications that can arise. But let's go back to the way Atlanta United built, and we'll try to compare. The actual dates don't necessarily line up because the schedules are different, but roughly pre-expansion draft. So Atlanta United signed Alex Tambakis. Didn't really make an impact with the first team at all. Made one appearance. Junior Burgos didn't make it to 2017. Jeffrey O'Toole never played. Andrew Carlton as a homegrown. Okay. Carlton has played some minutes with the first team. He's also played with your second team. Chris McCann was your summer window signing the summer ahead of the season. Important role. Not as a starter, I think, as he was initially envisioned, but an important role. Kenwin Jones, injured, never gave you what he could have. Tito Villalba, we know what Tito has given this team. He was your first designated player signing. That was in late July of 16. You signed Chris Goslin as your second homegrown player. Injuries have derailed his career completely. You hope that he can turn into something. So, okay. Now this is where it gets to kind of where we are now as we're getting towards MLS Cup in 2016. Brandon Vasquez was signed as a discovery player on December 2nd, 2016, before MLS Cup. Really nice signing at the time because you got a young U.S. international that you were able to get to see what they could turn into. I think maybe that jury's still out, but Vasquez has been U.S. Open Cup hero Brandon Vasquez, so he's had an impact in this team. The Miguel Almiron deal, huge designated player signing. That was made public right before MLS Cup. So that's the one that Miami has really lacked, that big impact signing, even bigger than the Tito Villalba one. Okay, so then trade window, you added Kevin Kratz, you added Harrison Heath, you added Michael Parkhurst, you added Romario Williams. So you had total at this stage 3, 6, 9, 12, 13, 14 players at this stage at the end of the trade window before the expansion draft. Miami has 5, maybe 4.5, because I think there's one that hasn't officially been announced, but is completely expected to be announced. The Venezuelan defender. So that's a difference. Now, how many of those 14 ended up playing significant roles for Atlanta United in year one? Parkhurst, Almiron, Villalba, Kratz and Vasquez in reserve roles. McCann, half starter, half reserve. Kenwin Jones would have played more, but the emergence of Joseph and also the injuries to Kenwin Jones ruined that, so reserve. And that's it. So we're talking 3 starters, significant minutes. We're talking 2 that were reserves and 3 reserves, 1 in Kenwin Jones, who maybe would have been more of a starter but wasn't due to injuries and became a reserve and didn't really factor in at the very end. Okay. You don't right now. I think you could say that Carranza and Pellegrini would be potential starters for next season. Ulloa, potential starter, but you don't have that impact of an Almiron. You don't have that impact of a Villalba. So they're a little behind, but it's not catastrophically behind.
Okay, because that was what I was trying to ask.
Well, no, I mean, nothing's... But this is the same thing we've talked about all season long. Like, if Miami goes out and signs Luis Suarez...
David Silva.
I don't know if David Silva makes that much of an impact on making the team relevant. And, impact. Maybe. I don't know. Maybe. But you're not going to get him till the summer. So, no, it's not the same thing. If you can somehow find a way to get Suarez, probably not. That's going to be the question, is does Miami now wait to make their impact moves until the summer window, midway through their first year, and not even have anything announced when you start? Or are they going to make moves that these guys will join in the summer? Or are you going to go make some big impact moves? Or Or are you going to do what Seattle, Garth Lagerwey said, what Atlanta did, and go sign guys who are going to be impact moves, but maybe don't sound like impact moves at the time because they're players that are not from major European clubs? I don't know, but nothing's catastrophe because you can make up for it with big moves. And we know Miami has the resources to make big moves. It's not the same conversation that you have about Nashville or Miami or Cincinnati where things become catastrophe because you make the wrong moves and you don't have the resources to adjust on the fly. Two different worlds, two different conversations about two different teams. But no, I think it's incredibly early to say that Inter Miami has screwed up.
And that was why I was asking, when does it turn into, I'm not going to say screw up, but like that's why I was asking, when does it turn into more of just the raised eyebrow, shrugged shoulder thing? And you're sitting there going,
Well, it's that now because of the expectation, but you also have a longer window between MLS Cup and your preseason starting than you've had in the past. So you've got another month to negotiate with players overseas to join in the January window to make other moves. You've got more time.
A couple of folks have chimed in about Atlanta United this morning, including Gustavo, who was looking at the roster. And as I dial it up here, by the way, still in a power outage. Okay, here we go. Gustavo says that the players approved by Frank de Boer didn't give such good results. Only Heinemann and Pogba played well, but not constantly. Gustavo says that Frank de Boer should retain Gressel as he's indispensable and loved by Atlanta United fans. He should bring in some Dutch Ajax player because he's not so keen about new South American players.
Who knows? I mean, I think that's a lot of assumption. One, it's not going to be Frank de Boer pulling the trigger on all the new moves. It's going to be Carlos Bocanegra and Darren Eales. I think that has to be understood. You know, does de Boer have input? Obviously. But is he negotiating? No. I'm not expecting that to be the case here. So I thought Heinemann did have a good impact. I thought when he came in, you had some established pieces. I can see Heinemann being the replacement for a Nagbe type of central midfielder. Is he Darlington Nagbe? No. Don't confuse what I'm saying. But is he a better player than he got credit for? And is he a better player than I think it was said? Yes, I do. I think he had more of an impact than that. I think he's a different type of player than Nagbe, but he can be a player that can play in the central midfield for you in this team and do well. Pogba, I don't know if Pogba was a De Boer guy. That's the other thing is I'm not really sure, but Pogba ended up being more than I expected. I don't know if he lived up to the contract number he was on, but some of that contract number that he was on relates to what you have to work with. And Atlanta obviously had the space to do it, and they did it. So is he going to be worth that again? You have to make that question, and you have to answer that question, and you have to say, like, do you want a player on $300,000 plus that is not going to be a regular starter for you? Do you have the room for that? Maybe you do, maybe you don't. That's going to be a question to decide. I do think the potential for a Dutch Ajax or player similar that Frank de Boer's either had a history with or knows well to come in and be that type of number 6, that type of defensive midfielder that you're looking for, yes, I think that could be a move that would make a lot of sense, and that could be a move where Frank's input is very valuable in putting together a list of players to go try to get, because that's a position that I think is very important and one that you didn't really have consistent. You know, between Remedi, between Lorenowitz, neither one is exactly, I think, what you want out of that role. And we'll see if you can go find the guy to be the primary player in that role, free up Remedi to play more as a box-to-box, or be a depth piece, and Larentowicz if he comes back, if he's that depth piece, or if he becomes depth in the back. I think having a starting number 6 who understands the way that Frank DeBoer wants to play in a 4-3-3 and in a 3-4-3 and the differences between the two would be really important. So that's the one that I think he could have the greatest impact on in moves off the field.
Shiva was very philosophical for her Tuesday thought this morning. She said she's feeling a certain amount of sadness today because we're not having a parade, but she cherishes the memories from last year and hoping that we'll see one again soon in the near future.
Yep, Seattle's having their parade. It is party time in Seattle, Washington. Good for them. I mean, this is a lot of debate yesterday around the whole thing with dynasty. No, I don't think Seattle's a dynasty winning 2 titles in 4 years. I'm not insulted by the idea, but I think that you appeared in 3 of 4, you won 2, but I think that you've got to add one more in a very short term to be considered a dynasty. I think you are in the Hall of Very Good. I don't think you're a dynasty. Oh, you're way past the Hall of Very Good. Come on now. Who are you going to compare it to?
I wasn't comparing it to anybody,
but
in that particular.
You have to, and you can say they're more than very good, and they're not a dynasty. They're the team of the decade. I still don't call it a dynasty. They made the playoffs every year. They won 2 titles. Yeah. They won a Supporters' Shield. They won 3 Open Cups. They went to a 4th Open Cup. They didn't miss the playoffs, and they've been to 3 or 4 MLS Cups at the end of the decade. They're the team of the decade. From 2010 to 2019, they're the team of the decade. I think they're ahead of the LA Galaxy, who won 1 more MLS Cup. The Galaxy missed 2 playoffs badly. I'm not putting them as the team of the decade. They're ahead of Sporting Kansas City, who won more Open Cups and won 1 MLS Cup, but they missed the playoffs. And I don't rate the Open Cup as high as MLS Cup. So I'm going to put the Seattle Sounders as the team of the decade over the last 10 years. I still don't call it a dynasty because they haven't been dominant in any of those MLS Cup wins. Their dominant year was a year where they won the Supporters' Shield, but they didn't make it to MLS Cup. For me, it's not about a number of titles. It's, are you dominant for an extended period of time? And I don't think Seattle's been that. But they're a lot more than very good. I think that's
I think you've been consistently very good over a long period of time. So I think that your team of the decade is accurate.
Very good though? Come on, they've been great. Like very good is like you're just, if they were just getting into the playoffs, fine. But you're winning trophies and you're competing for trophies on a regular basis. So you won trophies in, I'm trying to remember the years for their Open Cup wins. You won a trophy in 2019 with MLS Cup. You won a trophy in 2016 with MLS Cup. You won a Supporters' Shield in 2014. You won Open Cups in 2010, 2011, and 2014. So you throw a double into the mix with the Open Cup Supporters' Shield. No, you're better than very good. But dynasty is dominant.
Yes.
And they have not been dominant in any of those years, with the exception of 2014, but they didn't win MLS Cup in that. If you do a double involving MLS Cup, I think we're talking more dominant. In this case, you're talking about outstanding, exceptional, team of the decade. Better than very good. Very good would be even a step below Sporting Kansas City in my mind over the last decade.
So you'd go great team of the decade instead of very good team of the decade.
Yeah, very good team of the decade is like a backhanded compliment. They're a lot better than a backhanded compliment.
I wasn't viewing it as such.
No, very good is not great. And they're great. And they've been great over the last 10 years.
But not dynastic.
No, because it's dominant. And you look at 2016, they weren't dominant in winning MLS Cup that year. They didn't get a shot on goal in the final, and they backed into the playoffs because they started incredibly poorly, so bad that their manager lost his job. Other years, it's been the same, where they've started really poorly, and they've built as the year went on. To be a dynasty, you have to be challenging for Supporter Shield record number kind of points. You've got to be winning Supporter Shields on a regular basis. And before Red Bulls fans get riled up, because I've already seen it about, well, we're not the team of the decade. We had 3 Supporter Shields in 6 years. You don't have an MLS Cup. That's the complication of all this when it comes to MLS. The way that I judge it in my book, and it's not everybody else's book, it's just my book. MLS Cup is the ultimate trophy. You can't be a dynasty, you can't be dominant if you're not winning MLS Cups. Now, can you still have a great year if you don't win MLS Cup? Yes. But you're not the best team of the year. So LAFC was not the best team of 2019. You can't be because of the way you lost in the postseason. They can't be the best team ever. I completely disagree with that. They can't have the best 2-year ever. They had the most points, but what did they get to show for it? They won 1 playoff game and they lost 2. And they didn't get to an Open Cup final. And they won a Supporter Shield, but you have more questions than you have answers about it. So no, they can't. They're not the most dominant. They're not a dynasty. The Red Bulls can't be a dynasty because they won 3 Supporter Shields. They didn't win an MLS Cup. You start from MLS Cup winners. You start from teams that won multiple of them. The LA Galaxy, from 2011 to 2014, I'll go dynasty. Short dynasty,
yeah.
But I will go dynasty because you won 3 MLS Cups. You had a Supporter Shield double mixed in there as well. Yeah, I'll go dynasty with those 4.
Yeah.
That 4-year span, for sure. Seattle, in this 4-year span, they won 2. They didn't get a Supporter Shield in it. They didn't get an Open Cup in it. They didn't add anything bonus like a Campeones Cup or a CONCACAF or anything like that. So not a dynasty in the last 4-year period. And dynasty, too, it's not a 1 year. It's not a 2 year. It's not a... I think it's at least 4 years.
Yeah.
Preferably longer to truly get dynasty status.
Yeah.
So your 2 dynasties in MLS for me are 1996 to 1999 DC United and 2011 to 2014 LA Galaxy.
Yes.
And the first one is maybe more impressive because you have an Inter-American title, you have a CONCACAF title in that first DC group. It's a smaller league, so you do have to take it with a grain of salt, but I'll put that one a little more impressive slightly than the Galaxy one, but the Galaxy 2011 to 14 is the last dynasty in MLS.
No, I agree with you on the two dynasties. Yeah, I'm right there with you on those.
But this is better than very good. And over a 10-year span, might be the best 10-year span in league history. You have to go back and compare. I mean, DC won their 4 league titles over a 10-year span in the first 10 years of the league. They had some bad years mixed in, and it's a smaller league, so it's a different conversation. I think this sustained run of excellence, making the playoffs every year, winning 2 titles, winning 3 Open Cups. You want to go back to 2009, they won an Open Cup then too, so they got 4 Open Cups in their whole history. You've got a Supporter Shield. You haven't had that CONCACAF run outside of the semifinals in 2012. You need better performances there, and you need better consistent performances in the regular season. I think those are the missing elements from Seattle, but you're still talking excellence. Just not dynasty.
Yeah, I'll agree with you there too.
But very good. Seattle should be throwing coffee at you.
All right, then throw Howard Schultz's Starbucks at me. Like I said, very good for me, and I wasn't looking at it as any kind of a slight whatsoever. As a backhanded compliment, I was not viewing it as such.
Sounds like it though, because very good's not the best, and it's a big step from the best, at least in I think the way it's generally used. So I don't know. Can they maintain it? I mean, I think, you heard Christian Roldan, who said, look, they've got to be better in regular season play. They've got to be competing for supporter shields. They need to be at that level of dominance. I mean, this is a Seattle team that since their 64 points in 2014, that was enough for the supporter shield. And their 63 points in 2011, that was second overall. They haven't broken 60 points. I mean, this was a 56-point team this year, 59 in 2018, fourth overall. They were fourth overall this year. But 2017, 2016, they were seventh overall. They had 48 points in 2016 when they won the title. In 2015, they had 51 points. So that's got to pick up. They've got to be better in the regular season to be true dynasty status. Or go win CONCACAF next year. That changes that conversation and that narrative as well. Anything else on the Twitters before we need to go?
A couple of conversations with Gustavo talking formation, but I think we're pretty safe.
Yeah, no other updates yet. Dax McCarty deal is done. Waiting on others. We will get into U.S. men's national team starting tomorrow as the massive, big, huge game on Friday with Canada awaits. No Christian Pulisic, and it was one of the weirdest roster announcements I've ever seen with, we're waiting to see, and we're talking about Christian Pulisic being available, and like 30 minutes later, Greg Berhalter says he's not available, and it's like, what? What are you guys doing? We'll get into all of that. Also, one last thing that is coming out of the English side of things. Luciano Acosta is saying that Wayne Rooney wants to bring him to Derby County. So, okay. We'll see if Lucharoo gets reunited at Derby. Possible. Anything can happen. It's the silly season. Yeah. Get ready for it. So, we'll be back tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock on the SDH app, on soccerdownhere.net, on Spreaker. We will see you on November 19th at Wild Heaven Brewing with Kevin Egan, with Mike Conti. We'll see you on December 4th at Reformation. Buy some scarves, buy some T-shirts, buy some coffee mugs. Go to our Teespring store and do that. We'll be blasting those links out as we go consistently, but go check it out. Teespring, do the search for Soccer Down Here. We're there. We've got stuff for you.
Yeah.
But we'll be back tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock. Much plot, y'all.
Much plot, y'all.